Supporters believe him. CNN's Randy Kay went to a Trump rally in Florida and found a skeptical and at times hostile crowd.
A lot of the polls are showing that Trump is trailing. Do you believe the polls?
No, I really don't.
Donald Trump has said that the polls are inaccurate. He doesn't believe them. What do you think?
I don't believe them either.
Many here suggest the polls are wrong because people are afraid to say who they're voting for. But our questions about the polls were quickly interrupted by this man.
I see you guys so hypocritical.
I've never seen you before. You don't know me.
No, but I know your news station, and to me it's biased.
Shortly after that, he agreed to an interview. What do you think about the polls that all seem to show right now Donald Trump trailing?
I think the polls are trash. It's baloney.
Do you believe that these are fake polls?
Oh, yes, definitely, because I see the bias in the whole media. It's because he's not the usual candidate that you would select. You see, he decides himself, right, to be who he is.
We moved on, asking supporters how Trump can turn things around, given that his own campaign manager acknowledges they are behind in the polls.
Right now, he needs to stay point on. He does need to put his structured points out there of what he plans on doing. He has to share with everybody what his agendas are. And
will that help win him more support, do you think?
It will.
With so many polls, regardless of what you believe, showing Donald Trump trailing, what do you think he needs to say at this point to win the support of more American people?
Donald Trump needs to go exactly and say what he did Saturday as far as his vision and his 100-day, what he will do in the first 100 days.
You want more specifics?
That was excellent.
Supporters here were telling me how Trump needs to stay on message when, again, things turned ugly.
They're going to chop up everything you say. They're going to twist it. CNN
nice
sucks.
To see you too.
CNN
nice
sucks.
To see you.
I know who you are. You're a liar.
Okay.
You're a liar.
Nice to see you. Thank you. You said your piece.
You chop everything up and you edit it to your advantage. You suck.
Finally, even fellow supporters had enough.
Okay, let us talk. We have the right to answer the questions
that they ask. To say what I want to say.
You're making a fool of yourself in front of all the Trump fans here.
CNN sucks.
All right, so let's talk about this. Mark Preston is back, so is David Swerdlook, and Alan Abramowitz is here. He's a professor of political science at Emory University, and he is a polling expert. So Mark, you can see Trump's words resonate with his supporters, crooked media, phony polls. He's sort of pitting he and his followers as the whole world is against them, and it's working with at least part of the electorate.
Yeah, it's certainly working with about a third right now. We're looking at his baseline at about 35%. I mean, you're looking at an electorate, and we talked a little bit about this in the last segment about Obamacare. We got a very angry, frustrated electorate right now, and a lot of folks don't understand why those folks are angry or mad, and they look at the media and they look at the political establishment as being against them. And you know, unfortunately, I mean, that's not necessarily the case. But when you are so wound up and you feel that like you've been given the short end of the stick, you're going to see situations like that.
David, now Mr. Trump said yesterday, well, he cited dark polls. Do you know what that means, dark polls?
Well, Trump loved polls while he was winning the primaries, and now he's, lashing out against polling in general. I don't want to define what he meant by dark polls, only simply to say that, look, he knows how to read a poll number. There are lots of credible polls out there, Carol. His campaign manager, Kellyanne Conway, who has done everything she can do to keep him in this race, is a pollster. So they can read polls. If you look at the CNN ORC poll yesterday, Clinton has a comfortable but not huge 5-point lead, but the numbers are in the details, right? Trump leads 2-1 among white voters with no college degree, and Clinton has a 12-point lead among women voters. That is the tale of this election. Not dark polls, not media bias. This is a turnout election, a demographic election, and you have two candidates, as we've been saying now for months, who have a lot of negatives and lean on each other's negatives as their main message.
So, Alan, you are our expert. You study polls. You're an expert in polls. It's what you've done for the majority of your life, right? So I'm just going to throw out some suspicions that people have about these polls. So Trump supporters think too many Democrats take part in the polls, and that's really why Trump is behind. Could that be true?
It's very unlikely. First of all, these polls are being conducted by many different organizations independently. We have polls at the state level, we have polls at the national level. We saw the same kinds of accusations made 4 years ago by supporters of Mitt Romney. They turned out to be completely baseless. So certainly polls can be erroneous. There are always sources of error. There's always uncertainty about exactly who will vote. But the idea that there's some systematic bias across all of these polls and someone is directing it is completely ridiculous.
Also, people think, Alan, that there are many Trump supporters not willing to say they're Trump supporters and that they're not being counted in these polls. Is that possible?
There's just no evidence of that. If that were the case, then Trump would have outperformed the polls in the primaries. He did not. He's not leading in the online polls where people are not speaking to a live interviewer, where there should be no hesitation about expressing their views. So again, there's just no evidence that Trump supporters are reluctant to express their opinions in response to polls.
And Mark, I'm going to ask you this question. So CNN, we have CNN ORC polls, right?
Right.
We probably wouldn't be a good idea to put out inaccurate polls, right? Because in the end, that would just make us look bad.
Right, and just in very basic understanding here is that the news is a news business, right? Our credibility is all we have, right, at CNN. So why would we put out a bad poll? And quite frankly, why would any news organization put out a bad poll? Now, you will have the supporters who will say there's a conspiracy against Donald Trump, but it's ludicrous. But it is interesting about Donald Trump that Donald Trump will cite a poll when he likes it. He will criticize a poll when he doesn't like it. And what he does do, when we're talking about online polls, the non-scientific online polls, he will say that, oh my gosh, those are the polls we need to look at. The bottom line is, just because Donald Trump says it doesn't mean it's true.
So, David, you're from the Washington Post. You're our buddy, our pal. Is CNN colluding with the Washington Post when both organizations put out polls?
No, as Mark said, news gathering organizations have an interest, and a critical interest in credibility, in providing accurate information to the public. Polls aren't always right, but there's no collusion. There's no reason for news organizations to skew polls in a way that won't reflect the actual people polled, and that won't try and predict as best as possible the result in the election. Look, Trump can continue to make this case, and it does resonate with that core 35 or 40% of support that he has had all along. This idea that the media and the establishment and other organizations or other trends in our body politic are aligned against him. But there is simply, as Alan said, not evidence of that. And I think the other part of the problem with this, he's doing a disservice to his voters, right? I mean, it's not that he couldn't win this election. If there's some huge swell of turnout among his core supporters and Hillary Clinton's core supporters, all just sort of like, shrug off the election on election day, anything can happen. But if you go by polls, Hillary Clinton has a small but sustained lead now in this election, and there's only 2 weeks left in which Trump has to change that.
All right, I have to leave it there. Mark Preston, David Swordlook, Alan Abramowitz, thanks to all of you. Still to come in the newsroom, a ballot battle playing out in high-stakes Georgia. More than 100,000 voter registration applications not yet processed in this toss-up state. So what's the deal? But first, we are moments away from this key earnings report that comes out this week. CNN Money correspondent Alison Kosik at the New York Stock Exchange with more on that. Hi, Alison.
Good morning, Carol. So a flood of earnings reports are rolling in today. Big names that you may recognize like JetBlue, Under Armour. But yes, it is fair to say that Apple will get the most attention when it reports after the closing bell today. The big question everybody's asking, will Apple end the streak of slumping iPhone sales? The biggest publicly traded company in the U.S. unveiled the new iPhone 7 last month. So the first couple of weeks of sales will be included in the report, although they're unlikely to have a big effect on results. Still, investors are going to be looking to see if Apple reports decent iPhone 7 sales. Now, despite 2 quarters in a row of slowing iPhone revenue, the stock is still up 12% this year. I do want to mention one other company reporting today, my personal favorite of the day. It's iRobot. You know this company, Carol, because of the commercials. I think we have some video of that little robotic vacuum, doing all the work, vacuuming your floor while you sit on the couch, maybe drinking a beer. I bet you didn't know this, but this is actually a technology company that doesn't just build vacuum cleaners like the Roomba that you see there. It also builds military and police robots. So this is a public company valued at $1.25 billion. So it's reporting today. Analysts at this point unsure if it will beat expectations, but I'm thinking it'll definitely beat my expectations of vacuuming the floor better than I can do. Carol?
I'm with you, Allison. Thanks so much. The new CNN Money Stream app is here. Your favorite business topics all in one feed. Every story, video, and tweet handpicked just for you. Download it now on your iPhone or Android device.
Before